Oilers Now digital content is sponsored by Legacy Heating and Cooling. No payments and no interest for a year. That's how you build a legacy.
He is going into his 16th season of being an Edmonton Oilers broadcaster from NHL Hockey and Rogers and Sportsnet and the Oilers Radio Network. Jack Michaels. Hello, Jack. How you doing?
Great, Bob. How are you?
I'm good, but I hate to be a Debbie Downer to start. I want to talk about your beloved Cleveland Browns.
I don't know how much longer they're going to even be relevant in any kind of conversation. They might be looking at a 6 or 7 week season because the schedule doesn't get any easier with everyone's Super Bowl darling Green Bay up next.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about Baker Mayfield? Did they punt?
Here's the thing.
Yep.
And maybe this will preemptively answer your question. I think the worst thing that happened to the Cleveland Browns is that he tried to play through that shoulder injury down the stretch a few years ago. And when he played lousy and the Browns fell out of playoff contention, they panicked and went and got Deshaun Watson. Well, Mayfield was hurt. He shouldn't have been playing. And he was trying to gut it out for his squad because they had made the playoffs the year before. And that, for whatever reason, somehow convinced them, instead of recognizing, hey, he was playing hurt, this isn't our guy, let's go get Deshaun Watson, who wasn't even a shiny new toy, Bob. I mean, He was already sullied by the scandal involving all those massage therapists. So yet another catastrophic front office decision made by the Cleveland Browns. And since they returned to the league in 1999, there's been a series of them.
So here's the thing, Jack, what I've never understood, because you take great, and full disclosure, you have me and Cam sold. We love Pittsburgh, okay? We do. We love going there. It's probably, I'd go Chicago, Montreal, Nashville, Pittsburgh, you know what I mean? Like, I got Pittsburgh right up there. It's a hell of a lot better city than Philadelphia, in my opinion. So how does a guy from Western Pennsylvania end up cheering for the Browns, who have been consistently not good, when at least the Steelers have been pretty consistent, all things considered? How does that happen, Jack?
Well, a couple of things, Bob. Number one, as you well know, I'm a different cat. I've always marched my own kind of beat. I can't help but go against the grain when people say one thing. And so when you're surrounded by Western Pennsylvanians who love the Steelers, I just had to be different. I had to, whatever. And then the second thing is that decision coincided with the first year that I can remember. First year, my skull must have been hard enough to remember a year in its entirety. And that year happened to produce arguably the weakest, most valuable player in the history of the National Football League in terms of when you look at his overall career. Not saying he didn't have a great year that year, but in terms of an overall career, maybe the most nondescript, most valuable player in the history of the National Football League happened to be quarterbacking the Browns that year. That year was 1980, and his name was Brian Sipe.
Brian Sipe, yeah. Yeah, I just, and I can remember where I was watching the Browns and John Elway, who, by the way, people forget this. He was well into his 30s before he won back-to-back Super Bowls. And it was on teams that had balance, right? Terrell Davis.
Well, they had Terrell Davis.
Yeah,
I mean, they before that, he had the likes of Sammy Winder and Bobby Humphrey toting the pigskin, and that just wasn't getting it done.
Yeah.
The one thing about Brian Sipe is he did, like Herschel Walker, play for a future U.S. president. So there you go.
Yeah, and I know and educate us here. Did your father not go to school with Donald Trump?
Correct. My dad was 2 years ahead of Donald Trump in high school, New York Military Academy in the early 1960s. Brian Sipe and Herschel Walker both played for the New Jersey Generals, which was the club that Donald Trump reluctantly acquired when he couldn't get into the National Football League. And if you watch a documentary, that was kind of an offshoot of a book by one of our favorite authors, mutually agreed upon, I think, Bob, by Jeff Pearlman, called Who Killed the USFL? Well, the architect of that insurrection / destruction was one Donald Trump.
Jack, we were talking.
He wanted to go head to head, and it wasn't going to work.
Jack Michaels joining us from the Oilers Radio Network, NHL, Hockey and Rogers, and Sportsnet. Jack, we were discussing yesterday because we opened up with Jose Gonzalez's Teardrop, which was featured in episode 7 of Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary. I think that's the best sports documentary I've ever seen.
The Last Dance, that's your favorite?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the best produced I've ever seen. I mean, it was really well done. And maybe it was the timing because it was during the pandemic. Who are you going to throw up there for? I mean, obviously there's been some excellent ESPN 30 for 30s, but you got any favorites?
Well, I like the two Escobars. I like the ones that kind of weave history in there a little bit, some sidelines.
I thought you hated soccer.
Well, I do. Well, that's what I mean. Like, for it to capture my interest, you could tell how good it was, right? And I think you and I both have it. That's another mutual interest in ours. I think we're both a little bit fascinated by the life and times of Pablo Escobar. But I mean, there's a litany of them. I like the one on Marcus Dupree, college football. I mean, that's a really good one. And quite frankly, I mean, the 30 for 30, the 8-part series where they retold the tale of the O.J. Simpson saga.
That was well done.
That's really well done.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jack, we're 6 minutes into the conversation and people are going, what the hell are you doing, Stauffer? How come you two guys aren't talking about Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers? And I don't know if you heard the opening of the show today. I talked a bit about this perception that Edmonton's only going to be good this year. We both worked for the club for a long time. They've added an entire development wing to the organization. They've added analytics, which they really weren't doing until a couple of years ago. They added a top flight cap guy into the mix. Kelly Larson, a guy that was a successful long-time GM. They've got people. Jack, you there? Did we lose you?
Yeah, I'm here. You got.
All right. So, anyways, I mean, I don't know if you can predict how good a team's going to be a couple years down the road, but I think that this perception that it's this year or bust and that the Oilers have already gone through their window, I think that's a tad exaggerated. What about you?
Well, I do think it is. I don't think. I mean, much like we don't know what's going to happen with. We don't know what's going to happen with some of these prospects. I mean, for instance, what if they hit big on 2 of the 3 of Howard, Savoy, and Tomasek? And I'm just saying those 3 just for argument's sake. But what if they hit big on 2 or 3 young guys that are in camp this year that we can't possibly envision, right? Then that all of a sudden gives you, 6 or 7 core pieces that are at different stages of their careers with McDavid and Draisaitl and Nurse still very much in their primes and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins still having a couple of years at the back end of his prime. So that's what I mean. Like, now, if you don't hit on any of them, on the other hand, Bob, if you don't hit on any of them, then you're looking at some sort of trade or, pick that's been made in the last couple years as having to hit in order to extend that window, I think. So, in other words, I think the Oilers are going to have 3 or 4 different ways to extend this window, but I do think that at some point they need to bring along a few of the young guys in their organization, and they're going to have to develop them to the point that they become, legitimate guys behind McDavid and Draisaitl that can ease the minutes workload as McDavid and Draisaitl enter their early 30s. And so taking some of those minutes and then allowing McDavid and Draisaitl to play closer to 21, 20, even 19 and a half minutes as they start to creep into their early 30s. That I do think is important, Bob, to extend not only the championship window, but the meat
of McDavid and Draisaitl's careers.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think as long as they got Connor, Leon, and Bouchard, and I was, as you know, more bullish on Bouchard probably than anybody in town, I'm not actually surprised that he's been as productive as he's been in playoff time because I think he can think under duress. And that's what the best people in every walk of life in real time are the best under pressure. It doesn't matter what the best doctors are, the guys that can handle this. Like when they're sitting there doing an open heart surgery on a child, they're the ones that are the best right at it usually have the ability to focus under pressure, and you can extend that to sports.
What's interesting with Bouchard, and what I think you're getting at, is some of the laconic, dare I say at times laissez-faire attitude and, quite frankly, play that creeps into Bouchard's game in the regular season, I think serves him well in the postseason because that ticker of his isn't really affected by whether it's game 36 or whether it's game 5 of the Stanley Cup final. He basically views the game the same way, and therefore, to your point, the pressure or the magnitude of a given situation, doesn't get to him. It occasionally will drive you nuts during the regular season when it seems like, he should be bearing down more. But I think subconsciously, guys like Bouchard, know when it's time to bear down and know when it's, maybe time to just get through the season. And I think that's where the Oilers are right now, Bob. As much as I'd like to be bullish on another 50-win campaign, another 106 to 110 points, ultimately I don't think it matters because I keep going back to one simple fact, and that is the only series that the Oilers had home ice advantage in during last year's Stanley Cup run is the one they lost. So what really does it matter?
Well, I mean, and I don't like being the guy playing this card, but at the end of the day, I think you could assert Florida was probably, we know they were a deep team. They were also, for the purposes of that final, a healthier team, and I think that plays a factor in it as well. I mean, just not having Zach Hyman. And speaking of not having Zach Hyman, he is not going to be available for the first month of the year. Who is best situated to step in there and assert themselves and stake a claim in the Oilers' top 6 on the right side? Who do you got?
Well, for me, it's Andrew Mangiapane. If he is ever going to have another 30-goal campaign, I mean, lining up alongside Connor McDavid for even if it's the first 15 games of the year. I mean, I remember that season in Calgary that Mangiapane had. And you and I talked about it at various points of the year. We started saying near the end of the year, maybe this is just one of those seasons where he never really cools off. And that's the thing, if you think about Hyman's 56-goal campaign where, mid-season we're like, all right, he's not going to score 50, but boy, he's got a shot to score 40. And then by the time, we were a couple of weeks out from Ottawa, you and I were saying, this is just one of those years where everything's going to go in for him. And I think Mangiapane's the kind of player, the kind of streaky player that if he finds some early chemistry with McDavid, I think is best suited to go on the kind of tear that we're talking about in terms of if you're looking to locate another stone cold mortal lock 30-goal scorer in the Edmonton lineup, if you get Mangiapane off to a hot start, I think he could be that guy as much as anyone, Hyman included. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but, Zach Hyman's going to be tough to come back and find a way to score 30 goals this year.
100% fair. Yep.
Yeah, Mangiapane has a real shot at it.
I also think Savoy, he played in every situation in the minors last year. Jack Michael's joining us. We got a little bit of feedback there, Jack, just you know. But anyhow, I could see Savoy being a 15-goal, 45-point guy.
Yeah, I
mean, Matt Savoy, for me, I think showed flashes at times when he was playing with Leon Draisaitl in particular. The key with Savoy, for me, will be to find a way to launch himself into that top six to get to maybe those numbers you're talking about. He might be able to do it if he was just a sidecar to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, but I think what can boost guys like Savoy and Howard and Tomasek is by earning more minutes with the likes of McDavid and Draisaitl, just to give themselves a little boost, just to give themselves a little sugar time even on the second power play unit. That's how you start accumulating that extra 8 to 10 points that can turn a 35-point season into one that's approaching 50 points, as you suggest.
All right, Jack. Well, thank you for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow. Are you busy tomorrow? Do you have to do a bunch of events, or are you taking her all in?
I will be taking her all in. You and I will be watching that scrimmage together. And I apologize for the feedback. It's usually poor when it comes to me, and I don't think today's appearance will change that whatsoever.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow, my man. It's all good. Take care. That is
Bye-bye.
Jack Michaels from NHL Hockey and Rogers and the Oilers Radio Network.